My grandfather's house had always smelled like cedar and regret. Even now, with the windows cracked open and spring fighting to push the must out of the floorboards, it still clung to everything, the curtains, the armrests, the brittle edges of memory sealed into every photo frame. I hadn't been back in years, not since I was 22, and I'd stormed out after Christmas dinner when my mother criticized my freelance phase in front of the whole family. She called it a hobby. I called her a coward. That was the last time I saw my grandfather alive. And now here I was 11 years later, the only one who'd shown up to clean the place after his funeral. My cousins had sent flowers. My mother sent a list of what she wanted me to box and ship. But no one came. So it was just me and the ghosts. I started with the living room, then the kitchen. There was a sense of duty in organizing grief, like if I stacked enough plates and folded enough linens, the ache would settle into the shelves with them. But the attic, that was different. The attic was his space, off limits to kids, off limits to questions, a place that creaked even when no one walked across it. The wooden ladder groaned as I pulled it down. Dust floated in beams of late afternoon light, like secrets suspended mid-sentence. I stepped inside. Boxes, dozens of them, labeled with black marker, dates, initials, tax years. Nothing emotional, nothing curious, until I saw it. A shoebox wrapped in twine sitting atop an old trunk. No label, just a faint layer of dust, and the kind of stillness that didn't belong to forgotten junk. I picked it up. It was heavier than I expected. Inside were envelopes, yellowed, curled at the edges, but sealed. I picked the one on top, written in delicate script, for Yem to be opened when she's ready. I froze. Yem. My initials. Camille Elise Morgan. I turned it over in my hands. No stamp. No return address. Just the name. The weight. The eerie sense that I wasn't supposed to be holding this. I peeled it open. Inside, a single-page letter, handwritten, feminine, neat, slightly faded. It wasn't from my grandfather. It wasn't from anyone I knew. Elise, if you're reading this, then your mother never told you. I wish that didn't surprise me, but it doesn't. I don't know what she told you about me, if anything at all. But I've thought about you every day. Your eyes, your name, the way you used to reach for my necklace whenever I held you. I know what they did. I know why. And I'm sorry, but I never stopped loving you. R. I read it twice, 3 times. Then I read it again, like repetition would force it to make sense. But it didn't. Who was R? Why did they call me Elise, not Camille? What did they mean? Your mother never told you. I searched the box again. More envelopes. Some opened. Some blank. Some addressed to initials I didn't recognize. Then I found it. A black and white photograph. A woman, maybe 20, holding a baby. She had dark hair pulled back in a low bun, eyes like mine, wide and wary. The baby had a tiny hand curled around her finger. On the back of the photo, Camille, 1992. My chest tightened. I was born in 1992. My parents never had many baby photos of me. They said they lost a box in a move when I was little. I believed them. But now, I packed the box carefully and took it downstairs, hands shaking. I didn't call my mother that night. I couldn't, because I knew if I heard her voice before I had my facts, she'd twist the truth into something palatable, something for my protection. Instead, I poured a glass of wine, sat on the back porch, and stared at the fading light across the garden where I once picked tomatoes with my grandfather. Who was R? Why was my baby photo in a stranger's box? And what was I never supposed to find? That night, I didn't sleep. I sat with that letter like it was burning a hole through the floor, because I knew deep in my gut what I had found. Not a note, not a mistake, a truth. One my family buried in the attic like it could rot quietly among the dust. But I had unearthed it. And now I was going to dig. I waited 3 days before I called her. Not because I needed the time, because I knew she would. My mother was the kind of woman who could repackage a storm as a breeze, who always had the final word in any argument, even if it meant rewriting history in real time. She used to say, "People only believe what you say with confidence." She taught Sunday school. She arranged centerpieces like a general marshalling troops. She never cursed, but her silences could cut you in half. So when I finally dialed, I prepared for war. She answered on the second ring. "Camille, how's everything going at the house? Did you find the vase I asked for?" Straight to the point, as if her father hadn't just died, as if we were swapping errands over brunch. "I found something, yeah." "Oh, good, that thing was a wedding gift." "Not the vase." Silence. Sharp, immediate. I could almost hear her posture shift on the other end. "What then?" "A box. In the attic." "Oh." She said it like she didn't care. But her voice had gone up half a pitch, the same way it used to when I asked about the bruises on her wrist. She said were from the cupboard door. "There was a letter," I continued, "addressed to Yim. That's me, isn't it?" She didn't answer. And a photo, a woman I don't recognize, holding a baby, labeled Camille, 1992. "Want to explain that?" "It's not what you think." She always said that. Even when I wasn't thinking anything, it was her way of stalling. "Then tell me what it is." I could hear her inhale slowly. "You were adopted." The words dropped like a stone. No build-up. No apology. Just fact. "Excuse me?" "You were adopted. When you were a baby. From someone we knew. It was a private arrangement. Legal, but quiet. Your father didn't want to make a spectacle." "A spectacle? I'm not a rescue puppy, Mom." "You were ours. That's what mattered. You never thought I deserved to know? We were going to tell you when you were older. But then you got sick. Sick. You don't remember, but you had a bad fever when you were 4. For weeks. The doctors thought it was meningitis. And after that, your father said no stress, no confusion, no shocks. So you never told me. Not after I graduated. Not after I moved out. Not when Grandpa died. You just hoped it would stay buried. We did what we thought was best. No, you did what was easiest for you." She didn't argue. That scared me more than anything. Because my mother did not argue. She weaponized words. And right now, she was disarmed. "So who is R?" I asked finally. Silence. The woman who wrote the letter, who said she thought about me every day, who signed it with one letter like I was supposed to know who she was. "Rachel." "That doesn't help. Your biological mother. Her name was Rachel Langdon. She was a student at the university. She worked part-time at the library. And she got pregnant. It was complicated. Her family didn't approve. She had no support. My father, your grandfather, was on the board of the college. He intervened." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean intervened?" "He paid for everything. The medical bills, the legal fees. He arranged for us to meet her. So he made the deal. He gave her a choice. And she agreed." "Did she?" "Yes." "Then why was there a letter for me in his attic?" That silenced her. I pictured her on the other end, sitting in her cold white kitchen, fingers tapping the granite countertop, rehearsing a line she hadn't used in years. "I don't know." "You do." "Camille, why didn't you just tell me?" "Because we were afraid you'd leave." That stopped me, not because it was right, but because it was honest. "I'm not leaving," I said quietly. "Then come home. We can talk. I can show you the paperwork." "No, I'll come when I'm ready." I hung up. And for the first time since I opened that letter, I didn't feel lost. I felt furious because the truth had always been inside the house. In the attic, in my mother's silence, in the way my father smiled through every school recital, but never called me kiddo like he did my brother. It all made sense now, not in a comforting way, but in a way that made the air around me feel cleaner, even if colder. That night, I went back to the box. I reread every letter, lined them up in order, mapped them by tone, by month, by the slope of Rachel's handwriting. She had written every month for 2 years. Then nothing. I flipped over the last letter, one dated just after my 2nd birthday. I don't know if these are being saved, but if they are, I want you to know I didn't give you up easily. I gave you up with hope, and with fear, and with the quiet belief that maybe one day you'd find your way back to me. I put the letter down, not because I was done, but because I was ready to find her. Finding Rachel wasn't as simple as typing her name into a search bar. Langdon was a common last name, and Rachel was about as specific as a whisper in a crowded room. Add to that 31 years of missing pieces and my mother's talent for selective disclosure, and what I was chasing felt less like a person and more like a rumor. But I had one thing she didn't know I had, a copy of her handwriting. I scanned the letters and ran a few phrases through search engines. Full sentences, little personal idioms like, "Hope blooms even in shade." It sounded like something unique, something she'd picked up from a book or quoted before. And eventually, it pinged. Not in an adoption registry, not in a legal forum, but on a blog. A gardening blog. Last updated 2 years ago. "Hope Blooms in Shade" was the title of the post. The author, R. L. Thatcher. Langdon. Married name. Maybe there was a small author bio at the bottom. Rachel lives with her husband and 2 dogs in Silverbrook, Oregon. When she's not writing about plants, she's thinking about them. There was a contact form. I stared at it for 20 minutes. What do you say to the woman who might have carried you, named you, gave you away, and wrote you letters you were never meant to find? In the end, I kept it simple. Dear Rachel, I believe I may be someone from your past. I recently came across some letters in my late grandfather's attic that I think were written by you. To me, I have some questions, if you're willing. Camille E. Morgan. I didn't expect a reply that night. I didn't expect one at all. But 3 hours later, she wrote back, "Camille, I've been waiting for you. I wasn't sure if you'd ever find me, but I've hoped. I'm here. I'm ready. Rachel." I cried, not because it hurt, but because for the first time in my life, a part of me that had always been slightly tilted clicked into place. We agreed to meet in person. She didn't hesitate. She didn't push. She just said, "When you're ready, come." So I booked a flight. 2 weeks later, I landed in Oregon with a bag, a scarf that smelled like lavender, and a heartbeat so loud I thought people could hear it echo down the terminal. She lived in a craftsman-style house at the edge of town. The front porch was cluttered with potted plants. Ivy crawled up one of the columns. Wind chimes played a soft, high song that made everything feel surreal, like I'd walked into a dream I didn't know I'd had every night. The door opened before I knocked, and there she was, Rachel. She was older than I imagined, of course, but the eyes were the same as in the photo. Wide, wary, watching me like I might vanish. I didn't. "Camille," she said, almost like a prayer. "Rachel," I replied. "Can I hug you?" I nodded. She wrapped her arms around me, gently like I was made of old paper, and for a moment I felt like a child again, except not the kind who belongs to someone. The kind who's just been found. We sat in her sunroom, surrounded by trailing plants and tiny hand-painted stones. She served tea. Neither of us drank it. I placed the shoebox between us. You wrote all of these. She nodded, eyes misty. I gave them to your grandfather. He promised he'd keep them safe, that maybe one day you'd want them. He never gave them to me. I know. Why? Because he thought I was a mistake you didn't need to remember. She told me everything. She was 21 when she got pregnant, a junior in college, alone, scared, ashamed. My biological father was a professor, married. It wasn't a scandal, she said. It was a silencing. My grandfather, a board member at the university, offered a solution. Private, legal, no fuss. He said his daughter had always wanted a second child, that it would be a gift, and that if Rachel truly loved me, she'd let me go to a better life. I never agreed it was better, she said. I just didn't know how to fight. Did you want to? Every day. I believed her, not because she cried, but because she remembered my birthday without checking, because she had the same nervous laugh I do when I fidget with a napkin, because she showed me a shoebox of her own, filled with photos, knit booties, and a single hospital bracelet with my birth time scrawled in blue ink. I wanted you to know where you came from, even if it wasn't with me. We spent 2 days together, not rushing, not stuffing years into hours, just being. And on the third morning, she handed me a photo I'd never seen. It was the same baby picture, but this time with a note on the back. For when she asks, tell her I never stopped hoping. I flew home that night. I didn't text my mother. I didn't call. I wasn't ready, because knowing where I came from didn't just change the past. It redefined the present. And the woman I saw in the mirror now, she wasn't lost. She was claimed. It took me 9 days to call her. 9 days of walking around my apartment as if each room held a different version of me. The daughter I was, the woman I became, the stranger I'd now have to be in front of my own mother. I rehearsed a dozen versions of the call. Somewhere between cathartic rage and ice-cold precision, I'd find the exact script that would shatter her defenses and pin her with the truth. I'd expose every lie, every half-truth she told to protect me. But when I finally picked up the phone, all I could say was, we need to talk. She didn't fight me on it, which only made me more suspicious. We agreed to meet at her house, not mine. I didn't want her near my space. I needed home to stay clean, untouched by the version of her I now saw clearly. Her house was exactly the same. Vase in the hallway, pine-scented air freshener, family photos like trophies on the mantle, the curated Morgan legacy, happy children, perfect teeth, vacations in matching sweaters, not a single trace of Rachel, not a whisper of the woman who'd bled, so I could be wrapped in pastel baby blankets and placed into this constructed fairy tale. She opened the door before I knocked. It struck me then how often she anticipated my moves, not out of love, but out of control. My mother didn't raise children. She sculpted them. I didn't hug her. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd once been grounded for asking too many questions, the one where she'd cut apples into perfect slices and arranged them like she was entering a contest. I placed the photo Rachel had given me between us. She didn't touch it. So you met her? Yes. What did she tell you? Enough. She pressed her lips together, that familiar line of resistance. Did she tell you she gave you up? No. She told me she was given no choice. Silence. She told me how Grandpa manipulated her, pressured her, how you stood beside him. It was complicated. No, Mom. What's complicated is growing up with a name you didn't choose, a family that erased where you came from, and a mother who never gave you the chance to decide who you are. Her eyes narrowed. We gave you a better life. You gave me a curated life. You think you would have been happier with some single college girl struggling to pay rent? Maybe not. But at least she wouldn't have lied to me for 30 years. The silence that followed was the deepest I'd ever heard from her. It wasn't defensive. It wasn't weaponized. It was regret. The raw kind. The kind that doesn't ask to be forgiven, only remembered. I was jealous of her. That startled me. What? Rachel. She was young, brilliant, brave, even when scared. And when you came into our lives, I thought, this is my chance to be the mother she never could. But you never felt like mine. Not really. You were always reaching for something invisible, and I couldn't compete with that. I should have felt pity, but all I felt was clarity. You didn't need to compete. You needed to be honest. She reached for the photo, held it for a long time. Does she want to be in your life? She's already in it. And what does that make me? That's up to you. I stood. I'm not cutting you out, Mom. But I'm done pretending that love without truth is love at all. I walked out with my head high. No tears. No shouting. Just a slow, clean exhale. Not because it was over, but because I finally understood where it all began. Later that week, I invited Rachel to dinner. At my place. No labels. No ceremony. Just two women, one who gave birth to me, and one learning how to be someone's daughter again. We cooked together, talked about everything but the past, laughed when we dropped the wine opener behind the fridge. When the food was done, I set 2 plates at the table, then paused. I added a third. Just in case, I said. The doorbell rang 30 minutes later. It was my mother. She was holding a small bouquet of lavender and a lemon tart in a glass dish. Can I come in? I didn't answer. I just stepped aside. I hadn't planned on the 3 of us sitting down together. Honestly, when I pictured Rachel and my mother in the same room, it wasn't a dinner table. It was a courtroom, or maybe a battlefield. Somewhere words weren't spoken but flung, and the silence afterward could bruise just as much as any blow. But that's not what happened. Not at first. Anyway, Rachel sat on the right. My mother sat on the left. I took the middle, like some kind of translator between 2 dialects of truth. They nodded politely when I introduced them, but didn't shake hands. They made eye contact, but only like people walking a tightrope, acknowledging each other only long enough to avoid falling. Dinner was quiet. Polite forks, careful sips, surface-level conversation. My mother complimented the food. Rachel asked if she needed anything for her flight back. They both smiled, but the tension was there, like perfume on clothes worn too long. Then, Rachel broke the ice. You named her Camille. My mother nodded. Her middle name was Elise, after my sister. I called her that in my letters. Rachel said, Elise. They looked at each other, not like enemies, more like 2 women finally seeing the full picture of a life they each only had part of. She always belonged to both of us, Rachel added, even if we pretended otherwise. My mother's hands stiffened around her napkin. I wasn't pretending. I was surviving. So was I. I didn't stop them, because this needed to happen, here, now, without my editing. You got to raise her, Rachel continued. You got the birthdays, the school dances, the scraped knees. All I had were letters and hope. My mother looked up, and I had fear, every single day, that one day she'd find out, and leave. Why didn't you just tell her? Because I wasn't strong enough. Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. Neither was I, but she still found me. I cleared my throat, not to interrupt, just to steady myself. You both loved me. I know that now. It wasn't always love in the right shape, I added, but it was there. They nodded, quiet. But love doesn't mean I pretend this didn't hurt, that I didn't grow up feeling something was missing, without ever having the words for it. Rachel wiped her eyes. I'm sorry. My mother didn't speak, but her fingers reached out, not to mine, but to the edge of Rachel's napkin. A small gesture, unremarkable to most, but to us, it was everything. We finished dinner. No yelling, no unraveling, just the soft exhaustion of three women holding generations of silence between them. After the dishes were done, we moved to the living room. Rachel noticed a photo of me on the bookshelf. First grade, gap-toothed smile, pink sweater. That's her, she said. The eyes. She always looked just like you, my mother admitted. I think that's part of why I resented you. Rachel smiled sadly, and I resented you for getting to see her grow. They laughed. A quiet, jagged kind of laugh, the kind that leaks out when sorrow runs out of places to hide. Before they left, my mother asked for a copy of the letters. Not to justify anything, she said, just to know the other side of her childhood. I gave them to her, because I was tired of being the only bridge between them. They could walk across now, on their own. As they stepped into the hallway, my mother turned. I don't expect things to go back to normal. Normal never really worked. I said, then maybe we build something new. Rachel touched her arm. Not erase, but start again. My mother nodded. I think we owe her that. When the door closed behind them, I sat back down at the dinner table. 3 plates, 3 cups, 3 chairs. And for the first time in my life, they all belonged there. I used to believe identity was a fixed thing, a mosaic set in place by the people who raised you, the name on your birth certificate, the stories you're told at bedtime. Now I know better. Identity is elastic. It bends. It stretches. It breaks when it has to, and rebuilds around the pieces you choose to keep. In the weeks after that dinner, everything felt quieter. Not the bad kind of quiet, not the void that creeps in after betrayal or grief. This was settled quiet, the kind that lives in homes where hard conversations have been had, where truth has replaced tension. My mother and Rachel kept talking. Not often, but intentionally. I didn't force it. I didn't orchestrate. I simply let them exist in each other's orbit. 2 planets long torn from the same sun, slowly learning the gravity of mutual pain. One Sunday, I found myself sitting in front of a blank journal. Not the one I used for writing work projects. Not the messy one for grocery lists and half-thoughts. This was different. I titled the first page, Things I Was Told, Things I Wasn't, Things I'm Becoming Anyway. And then I wrote. I was told my name was Camille Morgan. I wasn't told it had once been Elise Langdon. I was told my parents chose me. I wasn't told someone else gave me away with shaking hands and tear-stained cheeks. I was told I belonged. I wasn't told why that belonging sometimes felt so conditional. I am becoming someone who chooses belonging without permission. That's what this story had become. Not a confrontation, not a takedown, a reclamation. I went back to Oregon a month later. This time, I brought a box with me, the photo, some of Rachel's old letters, and one of my childhood drawings that my mom had kept all these years. A stick figure family. Mom, Dad, me, and a 4th person off to the side. Half erased. Rachel cried when I showed it to her. You always knew, she whispered. I think I did. I said, even if I didn't know how. We planted lavender in her front yard that day, side by side, hands in the soil, silence between us that didn't need to be filled. She gave me a key before I left. No pressure, she said, just in case this ever feels like home. It did, even before I used the key. Back home, I told my mother about the drawing. She looked at it for a long time. She was always there, she said softly, even when I tried not to see her. She's not a threat, Mom. She's part of the story. She nodded, and I think I'm ready to stop pretending I was the only one writing it. We took a photo together that weekend, me, my mother, and Rachel, in front of the lake we used to visit in summer. Rachel on the left, my mother on the right, and me in the middle. Arms not forced, smiles not posed. It wasn't a family photo in the traditional sense. It was a truth photo, a reminder that families aren't just made by blood or names or legal papers. They're made by choices, by showing up, by staying when the truth gets uncomfortable, by choosing love, even when it doesn't match the narrative. I printed a copy and framed it. It sits on my nightstand now, next to a new photo, one of me laughing, holding a cup of tea, hair wild from the Oregon wind. I look happy in it, not performative happy, not the kind you force for a camera, the kind that says, I built this piece. I chose this truth, and no one can take it away. I still get questions from friends, from coworkers, from extended family. Do you think you'll ever fully forgive your mom? Do you feel closer to your birth mother now? Was it worth digging into the past? And my answer is the same every time. I don't need all the answers. I just needed the truth. And once I had that, I could finally choose what to carry and what to leave behind. The little girl in that drawing, the one pushed to the side, is whole now. She has a seat at the table. She has two women who love her, even if it took decades for them to meet. She has a name that doesn't define her, only reminds her of where she began. And she has me, the woman who found the truth, the woman who stayed, the woman who chose everything,